Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your English Literature live class. So, we are going to start a new chapter today, that is chapter number 12, which is given on page number 104 of your literature books. Okay, and the chapter name is Sherlock Holmes and the Adventure of the Speckled Band. Now, Sherlock Holmes is nothing new to you people. Okay, you all must have heard, read, or watched series based on this book. Okay, so it's a basically a series which has been written by a British author, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So he has written this series basically where Sherlock Holmes is a fictional character. He's a private detective. Okay, so people go and consult him for in order to get their cases solved. Fine. So he is there, and in the series, you'll find different cases very interestingly solved by Sherlock Holmes. Fine. So it was written way back in the 19th century in 1887. So it's a very, very old series. Okay, where but it is such a classic that we are still reading about it. Okay, it is very interesting to read the books and to watch the series. Okay, many movies have been made on this based on this book, and many web series have also been released based on the same. Fine. So we are going to read about Sherlock Holmes, and the particular case which he'll be solving is that of the speckled band. Right. So let us start reading. Okay. So you people may raise your hands to read. Fine, Kritika, you may start reading. Read the green portion.
Sherlock Holmes is a fictional private detective created by British author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle in 1887. Holmes is a consulting detective in the stories, and he is known for his proficiency with observation, forensic science, and logical reasoning, which he employs when investigating cases for a wide variety of clients. Most of the stories about him are narrated by Holmes' friend and biographer Dr. Watson, who usually accompany Holmes during his investigations and live with him at the address of 221B Baker Street, London.
Okay. You can mute yourself. So now, as I've already told you, that it's a fictional character, and now by now you all must know what a fictional character is. Something or a character which is not real, okay, which is imaginary. Basically, it is the imagination of the author. Okay, so such characters do not have existence in the real life. So Sherlock Holmes is one such character, is a fictional private detective. Private means he is working in his own capacity. Okay, so there are people work in two sectors, that is private sector and public sector. So when one works for government, that is known as public, but when one works on his own, that is known as private. Okay, so he is a private detective working in his own capacity, and this character has been created by British author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. All right, created means, so this book has been written, the series has been written by whom? By this British author Sir Arthur, and so the character also has come up from his own imagination. All right. So, and this story has been written in 1887, very long back, right? So, Holmes is a consulting detective. People go and go to him, seek him for his advice, for his suggestion. Okay, consulting detective means one who gives advice. All right, gives suggestions and the stories, and is known for his proficiency. So, he's a very skillful detective. He's very skilled. Okay, and he's known for his keen observation, for his minute observation, and he is able to solve the complex of the complex cases, right? So he is known for that. And forensic science, so forensic science is means using uh, just a minute. Yes, so I was saying forensic science means using scientific methods or applying scientific techniques in order to solve some mystery. Okay, so that is the thing. forensic science is. So he was well known, he was popular for using for his methods or for his unique style of solving the mysteries of crimes, right? So that is the work of a detective. It is detective is who is a detective, by the way? One who solves the mysteries of crime. So you can write down who a detective is. He's the one who solves the mystery of crimes. So he was known, he was very efficient, he was very skillful, talented detective who could solve almost all the mysteries brought to him. Okay, whoever used to go to him to consult for his advice and suggestions, so he was able to help that person out in a fruitful manner. Okay, so it was always a success for him. Now, whenever you'll read this Sherlock Holmes series, you will find that another character which will be there, okay, supporting character, is Dr. Watson. So Dr. Watson is a friend of Sherlock Holmes who will be seen narrating the story, and he's also a biographer. That means a person who writes somebody else's account, somebody else's story. Okay, if you write your own story, you are known as autobiographer, but if you write somebody else's story, then you'll be known as a biographer. So biographer is one who writes the story of somebody else's life, or who writes the account of somebody else's life. So Dr. Watson was such. Although this series has been written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, but in his book he has made it to appear to the reader that all the things have been narrated by Dr. Watson, and all his cases, the details of the cases have been written down by Dr. Watson only. So he is the friend and a companion of Holmes. Okay, Sherlock Holmes. And where did they live? They lived at the address of 221B Baker Street, London. So underline this. This is the place where Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson used to live in London. Baker Street. Fine. So Baker Street was popular because of Sherlock Holmes only. Let's read ahead. Yes, Nashra.
Yes, ma'am.
Hmm. Is there some disturbance at your end, Nashra?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay.
On glancing over my notes, cases in which I have during the last 8 years studied the methods of my friend Sherlock Holmes, whom I cannot recall any which presented more singular features than that which was associated with the well-known Surrey family of the Riddlers of Stoke Moran. The events in question occurred in early days of my association with Holmes, when we were sharing rooms as bachelors in Baker Street.
All
It
right. You
was
can mute
early.
yourself. One paragraph at a time, Nashra. So now, yeah. So now you'll find that this story has been written in first person, and who is writing wherever you'll find I or my. So all these first person pronoun will be referring to whom? Dr. Watson. Okay. So it is written in the first person, and Dr. Watson is supposed to be narrating this story. So on glancing over my notes, so here my is referred to Dr. Watson only. Fine. So he's telling the reader that while he was going through all the shuffling through the pages of his notes which he has made, which he has prepared, of what? The notes of 70 odd cases. That means 70 plus cases, more than 70 cases, which have been solved by Sherlock Holmes. So while he was turning the pages of his notes, which he had prepared over the last 8 years. So since 8 years he had been there with Sherlock Holmes, right, noting down all the details of his cases, and the methods, techniques used by him in order to solve the mysteries. So he says that he cannot recall any such presented more singular feature. More singular means more peculiar, more strange, right? Features which have been associated to. Now he is going to talk about the case of the speckled band. So he is saying that among all the 70 plus cases which he has written down, which he has penned down, been solved by Sherlock Holmes, he has not seen or he has not found any such peculiar or any such strange features in any of the cases than the case which he is going to narrate right now. Okay, and what is the case? This case is of Surrey family of the Roylotts who used to live at Stoke Moran. So Surrey is a place in England, place in London. Roylott is the name of the people, name of the family, and Stoke Moran is the name of their house. So Surrey is the name of the place, Roylott's name of the family members, and Stoke Moran is the name of their house. Is this thing clear? So he's talking about the case of Roylotts who lived in Stoke Moran in Surrey. Fine. So he's saying that the case, the details of this case was very strange, very peculiar, and very different from the rest of the cases, rest of the 70 plus cases which Sherlock Holmes had solved. Okay. And they have been living together. The events in question, now the events in question means the details of the case which he is going to narrate right now to the readers. So the events in question means the case of the speckled band, which he is going to talk about. Okay, so this occurred in the early days of their friendship when they joined hands. Okay, who joined hands? Holmes and Watson. When they came together in association, so it is the story, it is this event of that time, very early days of their friendship when they were sharing rooms as bachelors in Baker Street. So when they were not married and they were living together in Baker Street, and they had initially joined hands, okay, came in association, became friends, or started living together. At that time, this event occurred. Okay, this case was solved at that time. So he still has the fresh memory of that case because that case was one of its kind and it was very unusual or peculiar kind of case. So he still remembers it. Ayan, keep your video on. Ayan Khan. Okay, Angel, read ahead.
Early April in the year 83 that I woke one morning to find Sherlock Holmes standing, fully dressed, by the side of my bed. I blinked up at him in some surprise. "Very sorry to knock you up, Watson," said he, "but it's a client. It's a young lady who insists upon seeing me. She is waiting now in the sitting room. Now when young ladies wander about the metropolis at this hour of the morning and knock sleepy people up out of their bed, I presume that it is something very pressing which they have to communicate. Should it prove to be an interesting case, you would, I'm sure wish to follow it."
Okay, so now he's saying that it was he's dating this event, and he's saying that it was early April in the year 1883. Okay, so 1883 that he woke up, and as soon as he woke up, what he saw that Watson was there standing beside the bed and he was fully dressed. Okay, completely dressed already, all set up. So he was surprised and he was taken aback that what is wrong with him. Early in the morning, he is all dressed up and ready to leave the house. Right. So he blinked. He blinked up at him. That means he blinked his eyes. He immediately blinking means immediately closing and opening your eyes. Yes, your eyelid. So he blinked that. And why do people do that? In order to make sure whether whatever they have seen is right or not. Okay, whether they are dreaming or the thing is happening in reality. So why did he blink? Write down the meaning. Okay, this can be asked. Why did what Dr. Watson at Sherlock Holmes? In order to make sure whether whatever he was seeing was real or he was dreaming. So all these things you people should keep on noting. I'm not just speaking like that. Right. So he was very surprised to see him. And why was he surprised? This also again makes a question, because it was an odd hour at which Sherlock Holmes was fully dressed Okay, early in the morning. Now he says he apologizes. Who apologizes? The Sherlock Holmes. He apologizes that he was very sorry that he had to wake Dr. Watson up because it was something very urgent. Why? So because there was a client waiting outside, okay, in another room for Sherlock Holmes, right? And that client was nobody else but a young lady who was insisting upon seeing him. That means who was forcing or who was eagerly waiting to see him, to meet him. And she was waiting in the sitting room, in the drawing room, living room. She was waiting there, okay, to meet Sherlock Holmes. Now he says that now why does he consider coming of the lady to be urgent? Because the time was such, okay, it was early in the morning and a young lady was wandered about the metropolis. That means she roamed about the metropolis. Metropolis is the main or the chief city or capital city of of some region. Okay, so she was roaming around there and she has come all the way up from her place at this hour of the morning, right? At such an odd hour, early in the morning, she has come up to see Sherlock Holmes and knock sleepy people up. Out means to wake sleepy people up, those who were sleeping. Okay. uh, then he says that all such scene, it makes him assume that the matter is very urgent. Okay, why she has come here is very urgent, right? Pressing means urgent. And she has to communicate or she has to share something very important to them. That is why she has taken all such pain to travel, to commute at such an odd hour. Now he's saying that this case also, he thinks that the case is going to be an interesting one. That is why he has waken Dr. Watson up so that he could also follow the case along with him. Okay. Okay. Now Om, you can read ahead.
Yes, ma'am. My dear fellow, I would not miss it for anything. I rapidly threw on my clothes and was ready in a few minutes to accompany my friend down to the sitting room. A lady dressed in black and heavily velvet, who had been sitting
Heavily
in the
veiled.
window, heavily veiled, who had been sitting in the window, rose as we entered. Ma'am, this paragraph also.
No, no. Yes, read ahead. Read ahead.
Good morning, madam. Say Homeless cheerily. My name is Sherlock
Holmes. Holmes. L is silent.
Holmes. This is my intimate friend and associate Dr. Watson, before whom you can speak as freely as before myself. I shall order you a cup of hot coffee, for I observe that you are shivering.
Okay.
It
Now
is
you can mute. You can mute yourself now. So now, when Sherlock Holmes says that he thinks that the matter is of great importance, and the case is going to be an interesting one, and he wants Dr. Watson to follow the case along with him, right? So that was the reason why Sherlock Holmes woke up Dr. Watson. So Dr. Watson says that yes, he would be more than happy to follow the case along with Sherlock Holmes, and he would not miss it for anything. Okay, so that means he was very much sure that he would be following the case, and he was thankful to Sherlock Holmes that he woke him up, and in order to follow that such an interesting case. So I rapidly through here again. Now I means Dr. Watson, and wherever within inverted commas you'll find I, there at that places you'll have to see who is the speaker. But outside the inverted commas, that means in the narration part, wherever you will find I, that means it is referred to Dr. Watson. So that you'll have to understand. Okay, is that thing clear? So he says that I rapidly threw on my clothes. That means he quickly put on his clothes and was ready in a few minutes to go along with Sherlock Holmes down to the sitting room where the lady was waiting for them. Okay, now here is the description of the lady. She was a lady who was dressed in black colored clothes and heavily veiled. Now, why do you think she was heavily veiled? Veiled means covering her face, okay, using a fabric, using a piece of cloth. So why do you think she was covering her face? Because she has come to seek to seek the advice of a detective. So she must have disguised herself, or she must have hid herself from the other people, so that other people could not see her, okay, or could not identify her, who she was and where she was going. So that is why she was heavily veiled. So this is very important. Okay, so you should make a note of it. Why was she heavily veiled? And she had been sitting in the window. Okay, there was a window in the sitting room, so she was sitting by the window while waiting for these men to come. Basically, she was waiting for Sherlock Holmes. She was not expecting Dr. Watson. So Sherlock Holmes entered and he wishes her cheerily. Okay, he says he bids her good morning, right? And he introduces himself, says that his name is Sherlock Holmes, and then he introduces his friend as well, because she was expecting Sherlock Holmes only and not Dr. Watson. So Dr. Watson also went along. Therefore, it was Sherlock Holmes' responsibility to introduce his friend as well. So he says that he is Dr. Watson is a very intimate, that means very close friend and associate partner. Okay, before whom you can speak as freely as before myself. That means she should make herself comfortable, because both of them work together, and whatever information she has to share, she can share with both of them without any hesitation, right? So this was in order to make her her feel comfortable, so that she could communicate freely without any hesitation. And then further he says that he would be ordering a cup of hot coffee for her, because she looked, okay, when Holmes observed the lady, she was shivering. So he thought that it might be due to the cold weather. So she needs a hot cup of coffee. That is why he says that he would order a cup of hot coffee for her. Yes, Anushka, read ahead.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, madam, said Holmes cheerily. My name is Sherlock
That we have
Holmes.
already read. Anushka, did you join late?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you have to read from here. It is not cold which makes me shiver.
It is not cold which makes me shiver, said the woman in a low voice. What then? It is the fear, Mr. Holmes. It is terror. She raised her veil as she spoke, and we could see that she was indeed very afraid. With restless, frightened eyes, like those of some hunted animal, her features and figure were those of a woman of 30, but her hair was short and premature gray, and she looked haggard. Should I read further?
Yes, yes. You
You
read,
must
then
not
tell.
you must
You know.
not fear,
Hmm.
said he soothingly. We shall soon set matters right. I have no doubt. You have come in by train this morning, I see. You know me then? No, but
Okay. Now you can mute
thank
till
you,
here
ma'am.
only. Ayan, what is the matter? Why are you keeping your video off every time? And a lot of videos are off. Why are you people in order to sleep? Khushi, Siddhi, Anvita, Atharv, and Aryan. Aryan Nath, Siddhi Ghosh. Not in the mood to turn the camera on? It should not go off now. And you know very well that you don't get attendance if your video is off. I'm not going to repeat the same thing every time again and again. All right. So when Holmes says that when he offers coffee to the lady. So she says that she is not shivering because of cold. It is not the cold weather because of which she was shivering. So Holmes says that what else then we could be the reason? Why are you shivering then? Why are you shaking? So she says that it is because of fear. Okay, it is fear, Mr. Holmes. It is terror. That means she is extremely terrified, right? Terror means extreme fear. So she was terrified, not only afraid but terrified. All right, extremely fearful she was. So she raised her veil. Now, when she gave this much hint that she was shivering because of fear, because of terror. So then afterwards she raises her veil and starts speaking. And Holmes says that yes, they could. Dr. Watson says that they could actually see the fear in her eyes. Okay, her because her eyes were restless, frightened, uneasy. Right. So when somebody is afraid of something, so the eyes they do not rest. You find uneasiness in the eyes. That the fear you can see in the person's eyes. So the same thing was being observed by Dr. Watson and Holmes, right? And with whom has Dr. Watson compared her eyes like those of some hunted animals. So here you can find a simile. Okay, which figure of speech? Simile, right? So he has compared her eyes, her frightened eyes, the fear in her eyes, to those of some hunted animals. Hunted animals means that the animals who are being hunted. Okay, when you go on a hunt and on hunting, then when you're about to kill the animal, right? So the fear which is there in the eyes of that animal being hunted, the same fear Dr. Watson could see in the eyes of this lady. Okay, then he further goes on describing her. So see, you will find the description of the lady in pieces. So when you are asked to describe the lady, then you have to collect all the points throughout the story and write it under one answer. Okay, so it's not that the previous description which I have told, only that much will be the answer. This again you are going to include in that answer. Okay, her feature and figure were those of a woman of 30. So by apparently, okay, her features, her facial features and her looks, all those seem to be those of a woman who was there in her 30s, right? But then when they looked at her hair, so her hair were gray, right? Prematurely. That means turned gray before time. And she looked haggard. Haggard means exhausted, unwell, because of some worry, tension, stress, or sickness. So when somebody overthinks or extremely stressful, so that person's also hair starts turning gray. So they assume that that might be the reason for her premature, for her hair turning gray prematurely. Then he says, "You must not fear," said he soothingly. Now, who is he over here? Um, Sherlock Holmes. So then he makes her feel comfortable. Okay, in a very calm note, he tells her not to fear because now she was at the right place. Okay, and then he says that they will see the matter, right? And he was very sure that he would be able to solve the mystery successfully. Whatever her problem was, he would be able to solve it successfully, right? So we shall soon set matters right, I have no doubt, means he will be able to successfully solve her problem. Fine. And he was very sure about it. I have no doubt means he was very confident about that. So this again shows his proficiency, that he is so confident in what he does, that he was so sure that he will be able to definitely able to solve her problem. Then he says, you have come in by train this morning, I see. Now see, here are the points, okay, which the author has used in order to let the readers know that how efficient, or how efficient and how keen his observations were. So if the question comes that you have to write down the examples, that how do we come to know that Sherlock Holmes was a very efficient detective? So you have to enlist these examples, that without even knowing the name of the lady, only at seeing her he could make out that she has come there by train. Okay, so that is the thing, right? His observation. Then the lady assumes that he might be knowing her then, right? because that is why he's able to tell whether she has come by train or whatsoever. So she assumes that he's a detective, so he must be knowing everyone, most of the people around. That is why he is able to guess that she has come by train. And he's not guessing all even, right? He is telling it with surety. You have come in by train. He has not used any word like may or might or something like that, which shows probability. But here he talking in a very certain manner, right? Certainly. Let us read and find out the other observations made by Sherlock Holmes. Some boy can read now. Okay, Arav, you read. Arav, and
Yes, ma'am.
hmm.
You know me then? No, but I observed the second half of a return ticket in the palm of your left glove. You must have started early, and yet you had a drive in rough and dirty roads in a cart before you reached the station. She looked surprised. How did you know? There's no mystery, my dear madam, said he, smiling. The left arm of your jacket is spattered with mud in no less than 7 places. The marks are perfectly fresh. There is no vehicle except a cart which throws up mud in that way. Whatever your reasons may be, you are perfectly correct, said she. I started from home before 6 and came in by the first train. So I can stand this strain no longer. I shall go mad if it continues. Oh, sir, do you not think that you could help me and at least throw a little light through the dense darkness which surrounds me? At present, it is out of my power to reward you for your services, but in a month or 6 weeks I shall be married with the control of my own income, and then at least you shall not find me ungrateful.
All right, mute yourself. Okay, so when he says that it looks that she has taken a train, okay, to where have I come? Wait, yes. So he says that it appears to him that she has taken a train and in order to reach Sherlock Holmes, right? In order to reach Baker Street. So the lady thought that he is a detective. So he might have known her. So he further says, he clarifies that he doesn't know that lady at all. Okay, so he says no, but I observe that now. If he doesn't know the lady, then how does he come to know that whether she has come on a train or something else? So he tells the reason also, based on which he has made that analysis, and the reason is that he could observe the remaining half of a return ticket. So that means she was holding a ticket, okay, and that was the return ticket, and and in her hand there was the remaining part. So half of the part must have been there with the railway staff, and half of the part has been returned to her, so that when she would go back, so she could show that half remaining part of the ticket and carry on with her journey, right? So he says that this is the reason, or his analysis or his observation is based on this reason, that he could see the remaining half of the ticket in her hand, right? And then again, so the second point, second evidence of him being an efficient detective is that he's saying you must have started early. So he makes another observation that the lady must have started very early in the morning. And another thing, yet you had a drive in rough, dirty roads in a cart. So not only is he telling the lady that she has come on train, but also he's telling that she has, before boarding on the train, she has taken a cart, okay, and she has traveled on a rough and rugged path. Okay, so this is such a keen observation which has been made by Sherlock Holmes, and the writer or the author has also very efficiently written down these points very in a very subtle way, so that readers can know that how efficient or how skillful this man was, right? So he says, first observation, that she has come on a train. Second observation, that she has started her journey very early in the morning. And the third observation is that she has also traveled on a cart through a rugged path, rough path, all right, and before reaching the railway station. So on hearing this, she was taken aback. Nashra, will you stop talking? Will you stop talking? Is a joke going on over here? The stories look simple, but they aren't. Don't think I'll be asking direct questions. So when I'm teaching and telling you the things in between the lines, you are supposed to note them down, not to talk to your people, to the people around you. Yes. So she says she was totally surprised. Okay, she was taken aback that how this man only she has spent a minute or two with him, and he has been able to make such a good observation about her, and everything is perfectly correct. So she was very surprised. So she asked him, how does he know all these things? So now Sherlock Holmes is a logical person. All right, he uses his logic behind every analysis and every observation. So for every observation, he's giving the reason as well, that how has he come to that conclusion. So he says that there's no mystery in that, dear madam. Right? There's nothing which is something to be not known. Okay, which is not evident or not clear. So he says that he could see the left arm of her jacket is spattered. That means covered with spots of mud. Okay, and such spots of mud in such a pattern, the mud is can be thrown up only and only by the cart. Okay, the wheel of the cart. And since the mud is there on the jacket, that shows that the path was not a smooth one. It was rugged with patches on the road. That is why there was a scope of mud being formed, right? Because on a smooth running road, on highways, can you find mud? No, right? But on rough path, maybe the path which are not metalled, maybe metalled roads, unmetalled roads, right? So there you can find the patches and the holes, potholes where the mud gets collected. So he's saying that because there are spots of mud on your left arm of the jacket, and at how many places? 7 places. So he could count also. He says that at 7 places he could find the spots of the mud on her left arm of the jacket, and the marks were perfectly fresh. So these marks were not because of some um, journey which has been taken up earlier, right? But the marks were perfectly fresh. So these marks have been there because of the mud, also because of the mud only. And in such a pattern, the mud is thrown up only and only by the cart wheel. So based on these two observations, based on these two reasons he has come to this observation. So the lady says, whatever your reason may be, whatever your method of or whatever your logic behind this be, you are perfectly correct. All right. So she says that she started before 6 in the morning. So before 6 o'clock morning, she started from her house and then came in by the first train. So she boarded on the first train, and then further she goes on to say that she cannot stand this strain any longer. Strain means stress. Okay, she cannot stand, she cannot bear. Stand means bear or tolerate the stress anymore, because if you know she would suffer or she would tolerate this stress for a longer time, then she would go mad. Okay, so if that stress would continue, if that tension would continue, then she would go mad. And then she further asked him whether he could help out or not, or at least throw a light through the dense darkness which surrounds me. Means she's asking whether he could solve her problem or not, whether he'll be able to help her or not. And then she says, she also clarifies before letting him know the details of a case. She makes everything clear, and she says that she does not have any money in order to reward him for his services. but then would be getting married very soon, and after her marriage she would be gaining access to her own income, and then she will be paying him for the services she would be taking from him, right? And you shall not find me ungrateful, that means you shall not find me unappreciative of your services. That means she would be paying him for his services later on, because right now she does not have any finances on her of her own in order to pay Sherlock Holmes for his service. Right? Is that clear? Okay. So let's read ahead. Yes, Yashi Arav, you want to get out of the class?
Light through the dense darkness which surrounds me. Ma'am, I should start from please.
Yes, please.
Please tell us everything about your problem, madam, said Holmes, taking out a small notebook. My name is Helen Stoner, she began. I live with my stepfather, Dr. Roylott. When he was in India, he married my mother, Mrs. Stoner, who was a young widow then. My twin sister, Julia, and I were only 2 years old at that time. My mother had a considerable sum of money, which she gave to my stepfather on condition that a certain annual sum should be given to each of us if we married. My mother died in a railway accident soon after our return to England. We lived with him at Stoke Moran. The money which my mother had left was enough for all our wants, and there seemed to be no obstacle to our happiness.
Okay. Okay, you may stop here. Now he is now after listening all these things, after making it clear that she will not be able to pay him right away, right? She will be paying him later on after getting married, after gaining access over her income. So Sherlock Holmes says that there is no problem with that, and she should tell everything about her problem, right? And he takes out a small notebook in order to note down the details which will be given by this lady to him. So she begins with her name. She says, "My name is Helen Stoner." So the lady who has come to meet Sherlock Holmes and the lady who has been described so far, her name is Helen Stoner, right? So if you are asked to describe Helen Stoner, then you will be writing all those points which I have made you underline or made you mark. Then she goes on saying, and tells him that she lives with her stepfather. The name of the father is Dr. Roylott, right? And when he was there in India, when he went to India, he married their mother, right? Her mother, Helen Stoner's mother, Mrs. Stoner, and she was a young widow then, right? She was a mother of two daughters, right? Two girls, and both of them were twin sisters, and they were only 2 years of old at that time. So they were twin sisters, and they were 2 years old when their mother got remarried with Dr. Roylott, right? And their mother had a considerable sum of money, that means a large quantity of money which she gave to Dr. Roylott, right? And there was just one condition you have to mark, that she gave the money to Dr. Roylott only on the condition that a certain or particular amount of money, annual sum, that means a particular amount of money had to be paid annually every year to each of them. That means to both the sisters when they will be married. After their marriage, the money which their mother had left behind, that had to be given to Helen Stoner and her sister annually, on yearly basis they had to be paid that allowance, right? So that was the condition on which this amount of money was given to Dr. Roylott by Mrs. Stoner. So afterwards, what happened is that their mother died in a railway accident somehow, and then they continued to live at Stoke Moran with Dr. Roylott, right? And the money which their mother had left behind, it was enough, it was sufficient for all their wants and desires. So it was sufficient, it was more than enough in order to fulfill their desires, in order to fulfill their wants, right? Whatever was needful for them. and there seemed to be no obstacle to our happiness. So there was no hindrance or no obstacle to their happiness. So they were initially living a very happy life, because they had considerable amount of money left to them by their mother. So there was nothing to worry about. But then something changed. Angel, have you read? Yes. Yes, Divyanshi, read.
Yes, ma'am. But a terrible change came over Dr. Roylott at this time. He quarreled with the neighbors and shut himself up in the house. He has a violent temper and a great strength to match. People are terrified of him. He has no friends except some wandering uh, gypsies.
Gypsies.
Gypsies. He allows them to camp on his land. He has a friend who sends him animals like cheetah and a baboon. They wander freely over the grounds.
Okay, you can mute yourself. We'll do till today. So now she says that earlier they were living a happy life because they had a lot of money left to them by their mother. But then some terrible change came over Dr. Roylott. Okay, Dr. Roylott changed terribly, because he turned to be a man of very bad temper. He quarreled with the neighbors, and he used to isolate him in the house. Shut him up in the house means isolate himself, right? He aloof himself from the rest of the people. And he has a violent temper and great strength. That means he was physically very strong, heavily built person, right? So that nobody could match with him. And then people were very afraid of him. They were terrified of him because he was heavily built. So nobody used to he did not used to befriend anyone. Okay, and neither the people used to get close to him. So he had no friends. Eventually he did not have any friends, and only some wandering gypsies, right? Gypsies are people who roam around aimlessly. Okay, wandering means they just move from place to place. They do not stay at a place, at one single place for a long time, right? So they just wander here and there aimlessly. So he used to allow those gypsies only to camp on his land, maybe in the backyard or in the garden. So he only allowed them to camp on his land, in the premises of his house only. And then he has a friend who used to send him animals like cheetah and baboon. Now see, it's such wild animals. Who keeps such wild animals in the house? So he was such a person who used to keep cheetah. And baboon means huge monkeys, a species of monkey which are very huge, right? So they used to wander freely. Okay, first thing, he has kept these wild animals in his house. And the second thing, he did not keep them in cage or chained them, but he allowed them to wander, to roam around freely over the grounds in the house, right? So this was the major change which came in Dr. Roylott's nature, right? So the girls, they lived under constant fear. So because of this scenario, what was the effect on the girls, on Helen Stoner and her sister? That they lived, please write down, they lived under constant fear, and they were cut off from other people. Okay, from the company of other people, because nobody used to come in their house and neither they used to go out. Right? So we'll do till here. I hope you people have understood so far.